Hey, and welcome back to the Me First Mindset podcast. On our episode today, I have my very good friend, Adrienne Jezick of the Marasco Method. She's a deliberate cold exposure guide. She's a meditation teacher. She has stuff on Insight Timer. She's helping people access neutrality. She's teaching real-time regulation. She's doing Akashic records. She's doing all the things that most people need for healing, and she's teaching us how to do those things for ourselves so that we can be our own healers. I can't wait for you guys to hear this episode. It's such a good reminder of how we are in our own autonomy for our own healing. I can't wait for you guys to hear it. Here it comes.
My name is Adrienne Jezick, and I am here to help people find their own healing through natural and ancient healing modalities, as well as self-regulation and processing.
My first question for you is, what does that even mean for you? What does it mean to choose you?
To me, it's a regular check-in. It's a check-in when I wake up. It's a check-in throughout the day. It's a check-in anytime I feel friction. And it's an ongoing question that I ask myself, what do I need right now?
Yeah.
I don't always know what I need tomorrow, and I may not have a choice about the number of appointments I have in a day or what I have coming up. And so, if I can just check in with myself throughout the day or at any moment and say, what do I need right now? Sometimes that's just a moment of quiet. Sometimes that's a phone call with a friend. Sometimes that's a second hot shower because, that's the thing that's going to feel good during my break rather than a walk outside in the cold rain. So it's to me, it's a constant check-in first with self. When someone invites me somewhere, invites me to a project, it's how does this feel in my body? What do
Mhm.
I need? What is coming out of this for me? And at first, when I first started doing this, it felt very selfish. It felt like, oh, you're just going to put yourself first all the time and like not have any regard for anyone else. No, 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 no. By putting myself first, not only do I get to show up whole and complete for everyone that I'm showing up for, I'm also giving you permission to do the same. Hopefully,
Yeah.
giving you permission to do the same.
Yeah. So my regard for you is to get myself right first so that you and I can even have any basis of having a relationship. This is in regard for you. It's in regard for me first, obviously, but it's in regard for you so that we can have anything at all, because without that, we have nothing. And I love the permission to do the same because we do need that. We need people to show us that it's possible. We need people like you that come up and say, hey, I do this and my life's not falling apart. I do this and I have beautiful relationships. I feel good and fulfilled and filled and abundant because of this. And that's not deterring me from being able to have connection. It's actually creating more integrity in my connections.
Absolutely. And this goes back to what I think is more of like it's like self-regulating, self-resourced, self-caring. It's not that I don't need people. I definitely need people.
Hmm.
And it's up to me first to know what I need. It's up to me first to know where I am. It's up to me to understand the things that happen in my head, my heart, my body, in order to be able to properly communicate when I do meet up with a friend and say, here's what I need right now.
Hmm.
So
I
part of
kind of
being
think of it
self
like,
resourced is knowing how to ask for and speak for what you need.
yeah, and that's like such a skill. I kind of think of the practice like this. Like people say, oh, I'm gonna learn how to empty my mind during meditation. That's the goal. However, you're never gonna reach that goal because your mind's never empty. Truly, you'll maybe get really close to it, but the practice of learning how to empty your mind is the important part. And this is the same. Like I want to be able to 100% self-resource. I will never get there because we are community beings. And I know that about who I am, and I'm not going to judge myself harshly for needing people at some point, but the practice of learning how to be self-resourced first, as far as I can take it, really helps me be so much more authentic in the relationships that I have.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you weren't always like this though, right? This wasn't you 100% of the time a couple of years ago.
This isn't me 100% of the time now, because it is a practice. So this is the
Yes.
other thing. It's like a lot of times when people spend time with me, they're like, how do you do this? Like, you're so grounded, you're so regulated, you're so this. It's like, well, when I'm not, I care for myself. When I'm not, I
Mhm.
go into my hole, I go into my hubble, I go inward and say, what do I need? And this came from going through some of the most extreme stress that I've ever been through. It's like I had in this time through my previous business and through my divorce with my ex-husband, it was going through two of the most stressful and difficult times of my entire life, and they spanned a course of about 2 years. So it was 2 full years of this constant stress, constant pressure cooker, and I was not ready to walk away from either. I wasn't ready to walk away from the business, and I wasn't ready to walk away from my ex-husband. And so in my process there, I had to say, well, if this is what I'm showing up for, this stress, this extreme stress, how can I show up as resourced as possible? So over the last 3 years, it's really been a practice for me of learning about that. What are the ways that I feel the most self-soothed? What are the ways that I feel the most cared for? How can I stand up for myself, even if I can't always speak for myself? If I'm in a position where I cannot speak my truth or I cannot share what it is that I'm feeling or going through or experiencing, how can I show up for myself? So that when I go through these extreme stress experiences, I'm doing it as whole as possible. And so no matter what I went through externally, the answer continued to be found internally. And
Mhm.
sometimes that meant sitting in the shit of it, sitting into my own puddle on the floor, crying and, fits of tears saying, I'm never going to get through this. I have no idea how I'm ever going to get through this.
Mhm.
That's okay too. So part of it is not just this beautiful self-care, loving, hot showers, baths, massages, whatever it is. Part of this is knowing that when I'm sitting in the shit of it and I am in the puddle of tears on the floor, that this is part of my journey too. That richness in that experience gets me all the way to this richness in this experience. It's also been a curated choosing moving forward of what I do and do not allow in my life.
Yeah.
As simple as driving down the freeway on my way to Target, and then all of a sudden I hit a traffic jam. I could sit in that traffic jam if I want to, or I can hop off on the exit and decide to go to a different Target or go to Target on a different day. And my preference is to go ahead and jump off the exit and not lean into anything that's providing me friction in any sense of the word.
I like how so what you said a minute ago is so important because there's a difference between allowing or I'll say tolerating and I use tolerance as a positive thing. It's like manage and tolerate your experiences. That's a great beautiful thing to be able to do. This is a different tolerance. So this tolerance is um, tolerating your existence without believing that it's your choice. So you're saying that I'm in this, I'm choosing it for myself. There's discomfort. I'm not just choosing discomfort for no reason. I'm choosing it for a specific reason. And that allows me to feel in choice with what I'm doing. And so, as we're navigating like what we're choosing for ourselves, as long as we really truly own that as the personal responsibility, like this is my choice, we have a higher capacity. So it ends up looking like I'm doing a lot of hard things or I'm putting myself in a lot of hard positions. And the action itself can look people pleasing to some people, but the difference is the regulated nervous system. I'm okay with it. I've learned to tolerate this in the positive sense of being able to alchemize it, work with it, learn from it, feel gratitude towards it. I'm not tolerating it in the sense that I'm gritting my teeth and I'm struggling through and I'm bitter and I'm angry and I'm exhausted at the end. So the difference isn't necessarily the actions, it's the energy, the way that you're feeling about it and how you're using it.
The difference is, am I empowered because I make this decision for myself, or am I a victim because I am unable to change or I cannot affect my circumstances in any way? And I knew very much that even though I felt like I couldn't make a whole lot of changes or decisions, I was choosing both of these experiences for myself. I had to see them through. And so there's an empowerment piece in that too, that I choose this. And even though these are the two single most stressful events that I've been through in my entire life, they were only preparing me to do this again somewhere down the road. I'm not going to get out of these extreme stress events. These extreme stress events, as I grow as a person, as I take bigger risks as a person, they're going to continue. It's how do I respond to them? How do I show up to them? How do I receive them? because we can't do this without that. There's no such thing as a perfect existence. There's no such thing as not having stress. There's no such thing as having a relationship where you don't have discourse. And so the tolerance really is just the buffer. The tolerance is, how can I create this marshmallowy space so that what is happening in my life is happening through me, not to me. And as I guess that goes back to the 4 stages of consciousness.
Yeah. Well, and I think that the recognition that I mean, I feel like I don't have a choice, but I know that I do have a choice. There's always a choice. I may not like the other choice. And so I'm like, dang, this is really hard. And I'm choosing it for myself for a reason, because some of these hard choices are in my best interest over the long period of time. At any moment in time, I can opt out of this, and I'm not going to like that either, right? Like, not everything is going to get me where I want to go. This particular hard choice of 2 years of struggle through the most difficult part of your life is getting you where you want to go. And so that empowered choice makes the difference.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't get to climb a mountain without stumbling a couple of times. Like
Yeah. And just
these are the
normalizing that
breaks.
as a part of the process is so important, because it helps you just have the capacity to keep going.
Mhm. Yeah. And the more I can sit in that, the more I can sit in the discomfort of stress, the discomfort of that tolerance, the more capacity I have for what's coming. And I got to say, life right now is pretty marshmallow.
Yeah, well, let's backtrack a little bit. You said something about consciousness, and most of the time it's like this idea of awakening, and usually there's not any choice unless there's awareness. So we don't register that we even have a choice unless we are aware of ourselves, become aware of ourselves. And the only way we can get there is if we take time to know who we are. So most people in their story had this like period of time, and then this one moment or a couple of moments where they started to become aware of their choice to choose them. So I'm wondering if you can remember the first time you ever were like, nope, I have to change. Something's got to change right now. And then from that moment on, you became more aware of your choice to choose you to go down on this journey.
I don't know if it was one moment or if it just happens over a series of moments. And
Hmm.
some of those moments would be like on the phone with you, where I'm just, I'm bawling my eyes out and I'm hyperventilating and I'm going, I cannot do this. I cannot do this. I cannot do this. And then you just being like, so don't. So don't. And in that moment, in those moments, I'm like, well, then if I don't get to see this through. And so sometimes it's in those moments of that, like really feeling like completely disempowered, like I have no choice. And then being reminded, well, then quit, then walk away, then don't do this, then find another. And then it's like, that gives me the empowerment to double down on my decision and say, like, you know what? I got to do this. I got to do this.
Hmm.
And I don't think it was any one moment. I think it's a series of moments. And it's a series of those moments when I was at my deepest, darkest and truly felt like I couldn't take another step.
Hmm.
And then, being reminded, I have a choice. We
You
always have a choice.
you don't have to take another step. You can stay stuck
Nope.
in the shit for as long as you want to. You're right.
Yep.
You don't have to. Do you want
And
to
there,
though? Well, now I do. I forgot
yeah.
that I
And there
wanted to do
were
this.
days that I would stick in the shit for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days. Maybe I'd be in it for a whole week.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's what it looks like. And I think that sometimes we get this idea that when we become enlightened, we become empowered, we become the masters of our universe, our emotions, our regulation, that we don't have those experiences anymore. And that's simply not true. We still
Mhm.
get to practice inside of those experiences. I just had one this last Saturday where I just canceled everything. I was like, I need to be alone. I got to cry. I got to just get through this. I got to figure out what I want. And that's okay.
I think that's such a misconception, especially in the spiritual community, that when you learn how to regulate your nervous system, that you become more regulated. And that's not really true. You just learn how to regulate more often. And
Yeah, you
maybe
just learn how to regulate your nervous system. Your
yeah,
nervous system's still gonna go haywire.
yeah, especially if you're putting yourself in big like if you're living your life, if you're going out and doing the things, you're gonna have dysregulation. It's a part of it. That's the
If
reason
you're
that we have a
taking
nervous
risks,
system, is to help us with that.
if you're taking risk, if you're creating, if you're putting out something new, which is exactly what I do. I'm constantly pushing my own envelope. And that means putting out things that I've creatively birthed and then waiting for the world to either receive or deny them. And that too is part of that process. Sometimes just even the creation of things that I do, I have to go through a sort of grief cycle of, okay, I just birthed this. Now I'm empty of it. Well, I feel some grief in that emptiness. That's okay.
Yeah. And I think that being vulnerable, just being like part of taking a risk is being true to yourself. I think that's the hardest part for people who are learning how to do the me first mindset kind of thing is if I choose me, then that means I've got to be all in on me and I got to tell people who I am. And that's a little bit scary and that can be very dysregulating. And what if people don't like me and you get into this fear based mindset? And I think that that just journey of allowing all of that to come through is what eventually leads us to being able to tolerate that within ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there are times when I don't like me,
Right.
and that's okay. And there are times when the people who love me don't like me, and that's okay. And there are times when people don't like me and I don't care, and
Right.
that's okay too. And there are times I do care. That's also all of this. Like ultimately, what I learned through this me first mindset is that everything is as it should be.
Hmm.
Up, down, in the middle, grief process, sadness, anger, happiness, joy. It's all part of it.
Yeah, I think that we get to see it from a higher perspective and let it be whatever it is without even attaching to it so much, right? Like I can be full of grief and also not be completely embodying grief for longer than I need to be. I can be sad without being depressed. I can be happy without being manic. I can be in neutrality in my energy and also be able to experience all of these wonderful polarizing emotions and still be okay with it. It's not going, I think that it's not, we stop judging ourselves for whatever it is. And that allows us to just be whatever it is.
I like that. And this also highlights to me that it's a lack of resistance towards whatever is.
Hmm.
So if I'm trying to resist my emotion, my experience, whatever it is, if I'm putting up that resistance myself, it's just like that flow of traffic. Well, how can I just veer off the exit a little bit? How can I lean into no resistance? Just because, like you said, just because I'm in grief now doesn't mean like I'm depressed. I can be in grief today, and that doesn't have to be who I am or define my life or determine my week or even my day.
Right.
How can I be in less resistance with myself?
And you and I have both had these experiences where we have dropped into profound grief very, very quickly, very, very deeply, and then come out of it and laughed about something else just as quickly.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's part of it. Also, one of the things that I was remembering is we were together, you were at my house a couple of months ago, and we were talking about my sister. And I was like, do we just let people die? And you were like, sometimes we do. And then I just had this like 2-minute ugly cry. And then we were like, oh, do we want to go to dinner? Okay, cool. Yeah. Like, let's go. And I think that's part of having a regulated nervous system is allowing the deep, deep depths and the high, high highs whenever they come. And it's not in a judgment, it's just we learn how to navigate them. And by being able to allow and navigate, sometimes they're quicker.
Sometimes they're quicker because, like, if you didn't go through that, if you didn't express that, you would have been carrying that. And this is part of what I'm learning about expression is when I have an idea that needs birthed, or when I have a sadness that needs felt, or when I have an angry experience, I have to express it. I have to get it out of my body through words, through creativity, through movement, through pause, through conversations with a friend, writing it out, whatever that looks like. I have to express it because if I don't, I'm holding on to it. And anything we're holding on to creates that fear, creates that lack of abundance. If I just express freely, if I just get it out, let it out, get it out, let it out, I'm allowing a constant flow of energy. There's
Hmm.
no stagnancy.
I heard somewhere along the lines, and I wish I could remember who I heard it from, but there was probably Instagram, some like quote thing, but it said that people who don't express probably were the kids where their parents hushed them when they were crying. Like when you soothe somebody too quickly, the
Shut
message
up
that
or
you
I'll give you something to cry about.
yeah,
Is that not the
or
worst fucking thing a parent sorry, I don't know if I can drop an F-bomb here, but is that
sure.
not the worst thing a parent can say?
Yeah, but even equally as bad is, "Oh, don't cry, it's okay." It's okay. So when we're soothing them and we're saying it's okay, like the message we're giving them is, still stop crying. And so we learn, "Oh, ooh, how do I swallow this? How do I like emote less and make my caregiver okay?" And the message ends up being that we can't get all the way through it. And so then, as adults, we have never gotten all the way through it. We've never had the experience of crying it out until it got better. We have never had the experience of screaming it out until it got better. So we don't know that it gets better. We just think, oh shit, if I let this out, I'm going to be like this forever. That's what the feeling is that anything that's a little bit more outside of my control is going to take me under for the rest of my life because we've never experienced just getting it all the way out through to the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's actually very profound for me. I'm sitting with that now too. I'm like,
Guys, same.
I was just like, damn. Now I mean, I knew that in my head, but it almost feels like I know it in my heart now that I've experienced that a few times this year and learned from it. Like, oh yeah, it is okay, and it does end. It does end, especially if you get all the way through it. But you have to get all the way through it. You have to allow, and you get like to the halfway point, and you're like, oh no, and you like try to kick back, like swim to the surface, and that doesn't work. You have to just keep going down deeper until there's nothing left. What was the question you used? Like, is there more? Is there more? What else is under there? Instead of saying this is too much, what's left? Is there more?
I dive deeper. I tend to dive deeper, even if it's as simple as, oh, I'm driving through the bank and I was a little bit rude with the teller. Where did that come from?
Mm-hmm.
What am I feeling right now? What am I going through that these are the tiny little expressions that I'm sharing with the world. And
Mm-hmm.
if you're my friend and you're sitting next to me in an emotionally dysregulated state, if you're going through a grief cycle, I'm not going to offer you a tissue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to give you a hug. I'm going to say, how can I best support you right now? Or I'm going to say, do you want to dive into that further? That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
The whole art of holding space for a person through that process, because even with our partners, we want to do that same thing. And this is what makes us think that emotions are scary.
Yeah.
My whole life, I was led to believe that emotions were scary, for one, because I wasn't allowed to express them.
Mm-hmm.
And for two, because my father, bipolar schizophrenic, overexpressed them constantly, and that always resulted in chaos.
Mm-hmm.
There was no regulating there were no regulating factors. There was nothing to say, this is the healthy way to express anger. This is the safe way to go through grief. This is the controlled way to experience happiness and joy. Not to say that everything we go through has to fit in some box.
Right.
But if we've never been able to see it through, we don't understand what that feels like, and it all feels overwhelming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that when you're talking about just like the mirror that we have with our parents too, we do take that into our adult experiences. And part of what makes us want to not self, but soothe our partners is because we're trying to get rid of the discomfort that we have. Like, I feel
Right.
uncomfortable with whatever's happening with you, and so I just want you to stop it. So I'm going to give you a tissue, and that is a me problem. And as
Yeah.
facilitators, you have been a coach for longer than I have been, and I'd like to kind of dive into that in a minute too. But as facilitators, where you are actively allowing and inviting people into their grief process as while you are being the anchor, we have got to be really mindful of not doing anything that's going to be coming from me. This has to be coming from you. And so if I'm feeling some kind of whatever, that's a me thing that I have to deal with later, not now while I'm holding space. But certainly we have to circle back on, like you said, where is that coming? Like, what is that saying about my nervous system? Where do I need to grow and heal? What do I need to learn from this space so that I can be in neutrality when someone else is having some dysregulation? Because that permission piece of being able to say, that's normal. That's
Yeah.
okay. That's allowed. That's welcome. It's all right. It's not going to change how I feel about you. It's going to change nothing about this. I'm going to be able to say, this is okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a coaching container. That doesn't have to be with your partner because we're not always supposed to be that for our partners also. So
Even in a coaching container. So, this is something that I've learned even while facilitating and holding space for others. I can hold that space. Maybe I've got a group of people and one person just really went through it. I'm going to hold that space for them. And before I get to the next person, I'm going to take a minute for myself. I'm going to
yeah.
say, just another moment. I want to make sure that I can show up whole and complete for the next person. I might just turn around into a corner and take some deep breaths. I might step outside the room for a moment. I might take my own ice bath. Like I will do whatever I need to do so that I am regulated amidst this experience so that I can continue to show up full for the next person. That also is giving full permission to other people to say, hey, this is big to hold, and I can hold it, and I can do what I need to give myself what I need so I can get to the next thing.
And that's that like almost radical honesty with yourself because like this is fine, everything's great. Sometimes that's not the answer if it doesn't feel fine. So that back to that like feeling of energy is that if it's not fine, being honest with yourself that how do I get back to fine? How do I what are the actions that I need to do for myself to be able to show up in the world the way I want to show up?
Yeah. And for me, it's almost always shaking too. Like whatever it is I'm feeling, if it's something I cannot address in the moment, I can physically shake it out.
Hmm.
That's such an effective and powerful tool for me.
Did you learn all of this while you were going through your own experiences with healing from your autoimmune disease with ice?
Yes, it was the cold for sure because the cold brings on the intentional shiver response. And there's so much to allowing that shiver response in order to release the muscle memory of trauma. And there's also so much to suppressing the shiver response in order to create a deeper emotional resilience within the self. But it was also about what I was reading and learning about the psychology of the body. So Dr. Peter Levine wrote in the book, In an Unspoken Truth, about the need for shaking, about how
Mhm.
when we go through an experience, an extreme experience, a life threatening experience that gets our, that even if you're cut off in traffic and it's that, like everybody's okay, but you had that, you got to shake it out. You got
Mhm.
to shake it out because if I were a deer in a forest and I didn't shake it out, I would become agitated. I would become angry. I wouldn't be able to focus on feeding. I would be disruptive to my herd. I don't know what you call a bunch of deer together, but I would be disruptive to my other deer people.
Or
Um,
you would be stuck, you would be frozen.
Right. And so it was also the books that I was reading that applied to the things that I was doing in the cold. That was like, oh, this is the full picture that I need to see in order to understand why every time if someone jump scares me, I came around the corner, I didn't expect to see someone. Like I'm going to shake it out. Or someone says something to me and it feels really good in my body and I get that like little chill, I still shake it out. It's like all of these things I dove into to learn about and figure out through healing autoimmune. And they are all tied into the ways that emotional regulation within the body or emotional dysregulation within the body shows up and manifests as physical symptoms of illness. So if I have a physical symptom of illness, this tiny little red spot on my face, rosacea, I know that I'm impatient about something that's happening. I know that I have to remind myself to trust the process and flow of life. So each of these messages from within our body are speaking volumes about what it is we need to hear. It was
Mhm.
also being in the cold helped me reconnect that brain body connection. So much of somatic release is being able to get us back into our bodies where we feel safe in our body. And
Yeah.
our brain and our body are connected and communicating because when we don't feel safe, when we're in a state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, we don't have that brain body connection. We run into doorways, we trip, we drop things, like we can't balance on one foot.
Yeah, you're
And
not present in your life. You're always scanning for a threat, but you're never
danger.
actually seeing any threat.
Right. And so part of what the cold did also teach me was what it feels like to be in my body amidst a threat and still feel safe.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I remember my first ever ice bath. It's one of the first things, one of the only things I've ever done in my life that makes me feel like I'm going to die without being in any physical
Actual
danger.
danger.
It's wild to be the watcher and recognize how alarming your body can feel, like how unsafe and dysregulated, disconnected, and like I just want to jump out of my skin. I want to jump out of this. I want to punch somebody. I got angry. I got like huffy. And then afterwards you're like, oh wow, that's really interesting. What would it be like for me to access my calm center and regulated nervous system in the midst of that? And that so translates to the rest of life. I've taken a handful of ice baths in my life. You take a handful of ice baths in a week. So I'm sure that makes a huge difference for you.
I definitely don't take a handful of ice baths in a week anymore. It's more of a practice that it's more of something I practice as it calls to me, and sometimes even when it doesn't. And it is practice. It
Hmm.
is practice for being in that discomfort, sitting in that discomfort, knowing it's not the end of the world,
Right.
knowing that really this is just part of it. This is part of it too. And then it's like training. It's like, an Olympic runner trains by running around a track. I train my nervous system by putting myself into an actually safe but feels dangerous experience so that I can practice my calm regulation in the midst of that felt sense of
Hmm.
danger.
Yeah, well, also getting that benefit that you talked about with the shiver response, so that your body, without your mind really needing to know what's happening, because there's so much wisdom in the body. The ice bath allows your body to go through a process of shedding emotional trauma by the shake without you having to think all the way through the emotional trauma or even remember what it was or pinpoint it or label it or any of those things.
And in that process, because of the copious amounts of norepinephrine and dopamine you're producing, you're smoothing over hardwired neural pathways created from stress and trauma, and you're creating tens of thousands of new ones from this place of meditative calm while producing all these feel good chemicals. So you're quite literally retraining your brain. It's like if I were to only ever do a push up in one way, and then all of a sudden I went to a trainer and they said, angle your elbows in half an inch. And all of a sudden my whole push up game changed.
Right.
So that's kind of like what this is. It's like, well, angle my brain elbow halfway in, half an inch in. How far can I take this? Quite
Right.
far, turns out.
So I have a question for you, about the contrast in your life from where you were to where you are, because I think a lot of people want to know, like, okay, this sounds great. I want to do this. I want this to be my life, but how do I get there? Right? Like, what do I? Can I even get there? Like, maybe Adrian's life was so much easier than mine at the beginning, and that's why she was able to, get as far as she's at now. And I think that it's important for us to kind of paint some of those pictures too. Um, did you choosing you, having these experience of recognizing that this hard choice is going to be in my benefit. If you had not chosen those things in those moments, where do you think you'd be right now?
I would be in an unfulfilling and unsatisfying relationship, and I would be still part of a business that was not fulfilling my ultimate desires. It would still be me putting myself, I don't want to say in harm's way. It would be me continuing to choose the hardest thing. And I don't think we always have to choose the hardest thing in life. Like, definitely, I needed to choose my relationship and my business for a time because I needed to see things through. I needed to know that I was practicing from all angles and that I did everything I possibly could in both of those relationships before I could say, okay, these are exhausted and no
Mhm.
longer serving me. And so if I had stayed there, I would be in a cycle. I'd be in a cycle of anger, of grief, of depression, of anxiety, of lack of self worth, of lack of self awareness, of lack of self connection, because also there are parts of myself that I had to kind of put to sleep or keep to sleep just to get through some days.
Mhm.
So if I had not chosen me, I would still be in the thick of it, but it would be worse because I would get sicker. I would get more stressed. It would be an onward, downward slope. And
And
what I realized, this was just a couple of weeks ago, I realized I had to get to the point where I was ready to lose everything.
Yeah.
I had to get to such a stress point, such a state of grief and anger that I was ready to start over with absolutely nothing. No money, no partner, no home, no support. I had to see it through to the point where I knew I'd literally given it every single part of myself. And that's when I started to say, okay, now I'm taking these pieces of me back.
Mhm.
Now, what do I want? What do I want to call in? What do I really want in a business, in a partner, in my life? And starting over from a blank slate, starting over from a nothing slate can be so scary, but I come from nothing. So I'm familiar with the nothingness. I'm familiar with how to come up from absolutely nothing. In this instance, I actually didn't start over with nothing, not from my relationship or from my business. I started over with years of wisdom, with accumulated experience,
Mhm.
all of this expression. So even if I started over with materially nothing, I started over with like the capacity for everything.
And a great list of things that you're not allowing in your life going forward. Things that you know for sure you don't want to be a part of your reality in the next iteration of who you become.
2023 was the year of no for me. Everything was a no until I could sit with it and say, like, do I really need and want this?
Mhm.
And I think that
Yeah.
we get so used to this society of like, yes to everything and try this and try that. And it's like, what would it look like if you could really scale back?
Mhm.
What if you only ate one set of meals for a week? You only wore one set of outfits for a week. You woke up every morning, you did the same, we'll call it Hell Elrod's Miracle Morning. You did the same 60 minutes every time you woke up. How much can we pare it down?
Mhm.
How much
I
noise and excess can we remove from our life to get back to bare bones basics and say, what is it I cannot live without?
It does take that. I hear that in lots of stories that there's a sort of moment of, all right, I pulled it all back. Like I've gotten to the point where I'm not attached to anything. Just let it
Yep.
all go. And in
Yep.
those moments where like we let it all go is when you recognize like the kernel of who you are. The truth is under there. And you're like, oh, hey, here I am. That's smaller than I thought I was going to be because we have that ego of like, I thought I was the whole flower, but I'm actually just like the seed. And
Mhm.
you unfold the whole flower and you've become less attached to it and you become the potential of what you're going to be next, which is the seed. And in those moments, just being able to say no to everything else. It's those two things. It's this awareness of who I actually am at the core, letting everything else go. And then, like you said, a big period between, I don't know, I was going to say 6 months, but some people don't really have that much time, but at least 2 months of truly just not doing anything that you were going to do in the past. Like, let's just level this out. Let's say no to everything. Let's challenge all of these core beliefs. Let's maybe shed a couple of things in my life to make room for and space for just me. Who am I? And that's what we need. We need the space and the decompression in our lives to find ourselves so that we can reroute and blossom in the way that we truly want to, or dare I say, are meant to be.
Yeah, and you nailed it when you said unattached to the outcome,
Hmm.
right? So much of our discomfort, our anxiety, or fear comes from trying to control outcomes. I'm in this relationship and I'm going to behave this way because I want it to go like this. I'm
Right.
going to do this business thing and I'm going to do these steps because I want it to result in this. And I
Hmm.
completely remove my attachment to all outcomes. When I find myself thinking about tomorrow, it's not like I don't plan things far in advance. I do, but I don't have to worry about them. They're not here yet. So at any
Hmm.
point in the day, I ask myself, is what I'm doing right now serving my highest and greatest good? That doesn't mean that I get to sit on a couch and eat bonbons all day.
Well, because that's not your highest and greatest good.
Right. Well, and sometimes that means like, no heavy working out for 6 months or even a year because I haven't felt safe in my body. I can do somatic movement. I can do gentle movement, like understanding, paring it down to the absolute basis base and saying, I am not attached to the outcome and I can trust in the outcome because I know what I'm doing right now in this moment is serving my highest and greatest good. And sometimes that's being in a puddle of tears on the floor.
It's almost like you have two tracks. Okay, so this is how I would act if I wanted to manipulate the outcome.
Yes.
And if I do that, I'm going to probably have a greater insurance that the outcome will be the way that I quote unquote want it. But I'm also going to be attracting things in my life that are based off of the person that I'm becoming in order to be in that vein for that outcome. Or if I do what I need to do for myself in integrity with myself, I can't predict the outcome, and the outcome's not going to be what I think I want. It might be way better. It might be harder for a time, but what I'm attracting is people that actually like, want, love, and appreciate who I actually am. I'm starting to calibrate on who I am, and that will attract the opportunities, the agency, the people in my life that feel more authentic. It feels like I should be controlling the outcome, but once we stop controlling the outcome, we actually have a more aligned life.
And we leave room because
Yeah.
what we think we want is just one thing.
Yep.
But what the universe has in store for us is infinite. Why do I want to choose one thing that's going to close me off to an infinite number of things? Because my idea of what I want is so much smaller than what the universe actually has in
I
store for
have no idea what I'm capable of yet. I have no idea how powerful I am and how much impact I'm going to make. I know that I want something in that range. Like, I know that's where I'm going, but I don't want to be the one limiting my own outcomes based off of my own small brain that I'm still trying to cultivate. Like, I know that there's going to be another quantum leap and there's going to be another breakthrough and there's going to be another awakening. I'm not going to make any decisions to align with what I think is important now and possibly cut myself off to what I can be in the future.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
cool place to be.
Yeah. And I love when people are like, well, where do you want to be in 5 years? Happy and aligned,
Mhm.
healthy, happy, aligned. Like, I'm not going to give you oh, I want to be in a mansion by the beach and making this much a year and have this many clients. No, I want to be happy, healthy, and aligned.
A big thing that I've learned this last year is when I think I know what I want is precisely the moment where the universe is like, "Well, what about this thing though?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, that." And it's usually like, "Oh, I have to shed something else to get there." But the more you recognize that you're taken care of, it's conspiring in your good. It's the hard stuff is worth the direction you're going in. The more times you practice being in flow and being self-resourced and being okay with change and being okay with the outcome shifting, the outcomes get better and better.
I've been told my entire life that I am overwhelming, I am too much, and people don't like that.
Mm,
Well, those aren't my people.
right.
So, in this full expression of me, in this space that I've been able to create really just over the last like month and a half of full self expression, I have called in all the people that love
Hmm.
me for exactly that, that desire my presence because I am exactly myself.
So,
The
what are you up to these days then? I know you've been in a transition and you're kind of in a reemergence and you're calling in some new stuff. Like, what's alive for you now?
Well, the Morozko method is still a great passion of mine. Teaching people how to heal their bodies, their minds, their hearts, their souls through the cold is my life's work. And I've chosen a life of service for this work. I understand that that is still something I need to put out in the world and I want to share with the world. So I'm still hosting Morozko method workshops in person and online. I am also diving deeply into my own container of becoming art. I have always all my life felt like a piece of art. You know, my background is in cosmetology, hair and skin, making people pretty, and I still love that. The way that I dress, the way that I do my hair, the way that I show up in the world, I adorn myself as if I am part of the art. And
Mm.
so I'm in this process with some other incredible artists creating this becoming art experience. And that also just has a world of possibilities. I wouldn't even put it into any one container because it's experiential, it's expressive, it is healing, it is me sitting with some of the most vulnerable parts of self. I mean, I posed nude a month ago while being drawn on and projected on while a room full of people were like walking in and out and doing the thing. And I'm 43 years old as of 2 days ago, and my body is not the fittest it's ever been. And you know what? I love it deeper than I ever have. Every
Mm.
curve, every line, every scar, every wrinkle, I just am so in love with myself. And so whatever comes up on my path, be it healing with the Morozko method, healing through this practice of becoming art, I know that I am meant to serve. I know that I am meant to share my experiences with anyone who wants to listen, because I went through this also so that maybe you don't have to.
Mhm.
We get to lean on the people around us who have been through the experiences that we're going through so that we can say, oh, you know what? That worked for you. Let me try it on for size.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We're again back to that let me live my truth so that people can see that it's possible. We have so many we have so many people that are living the corporate truth or somebody else's dream. And so we know that's possible and that's, in some ways quote unquote preferable. And we see, I mean, institutions, education lays that path out real nice and pretty. It's all like paved and they walk you all the way down it. And the path to yourself is wild. It's a jungle. It's uncharted and it's always unique for you, for yourself. But if you look over and someone else is hacking through the forest themselves too, and they're like, yeah, this is great. It's hard and it's terrible and it's amazing. It's lovely and it's beautiful and I'm still doing it. And you're like, okay, well, they're doing it. I can do it too. So we have this permission piece of like, I get to be wild. I get to choose a path uncharted. I get to make my own rules. I get to be the person that I'm meant to be from my own internal compass. And I get to make that choice minute by minute. And if things change, things change. Like I'm not at all stuck in one iteration of myself. I can be anything that I want in the moments that come. And I don't even know what that's going to be like, but I can hold all possibilities because I have that capacity I've built for myself.
Yeah. And there is no one template. There's no one size fits all. And so it's like, a lot of this to me has come back to people pleasing behaviors. It's
Yeah.
like, what decisions am I making based on what I think someone else is going to do or how someone else is going to react or how they're
Yeah.
going to receive it? And when I do those things, I take a step back and I say, no, if this person did not exist, how would I move forward?
Hmm.
If
Yeah.
their opinion didn't matter, if I was unattached to the outcome, how would I reply to this text? If I
Hmm.
were unattached to the outcome, how would I respond to this email? If I were unattached to the outcome, how would I show up at this party or this experience?
If I wasn't worried about what this person thought about me, if I wasn't worried about looking stupid, if I wasn't worried about looking unprepared,
If I
even like
wasn't worried
emails.
about looking, anything.
Yeah, like even like small anxieties about emails, like, oh my gosh, what if I ask this question? I'm gonna look stupid. That's a them problem. If they think I'm stupid, they think I'm stupid. Like whatever. And then
And
you
do it quick so you can find out quickly, because the people that do think you're stupid or think you're too much or are overwhelmed by you, they're not for you.
that's
So
right.
it's better that we get this out right away. I'm not going to scale back or hold back any parts of me, because then I'm just going to find out in 3 months from now instead of 3 minutes from now that we're not right to work together in some capacity.
That's the truth too. I think that I love that, like rapid iteration in your personal life too, and your interpersonal relationships. Like find out if your energy aligns and what your values are, and have that ability to have discernment with with your people and choose for yourself. Like that's okay. It doesn't even have to be that they're bad people. It's just not for you.
Just not for me. And even if people don't like me, that's okay.
Yeah,
Like,
for
I'm
sure.
not for everyone. I'm not palatable for everyone, nor is everyone palatable for me.
Mm-hmm.
A friend of mine said it to me just last night. She's like, your life is going so fast. The changes are happening so quickly. She's like, you've got this coming, this coming, this coming. And I said, slow down. I'm not there yet. It's not tomorrow yet. I said, all of these things are happening very quickly. I'm still moving slow as molasses because I'm choosing to be right here, right now. So when
Mm-hmm.
you're bringing up this thing I have coming up, that thing I have, that thing, I was like, no, 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 honey, scale it back. I'm right here, right now. Yeah, these are things that I have coming up in the future. That's all true. But do not overwhelm me in my life by pointing out to me all that's coming up for me.
Mm.
So I even scale back my friends when they get excited about the changes they've seen in my life. And I'm like, Mm-mm-mm-mm.
That's not
Not
happened yet.
that is not palatable.
Yeah. So what advice do you have for people that are looking to make changes like this, live more truly and authentically into their own lives, and just become more true expressions of themselves?
I think have your list of people who understand that you're going through this process. So when I
Mm,
was going through it, you were top of my list for people that I would call when I knew that I was in the thick of it. And I know that this is an inner circle, reciprocal relationship of someone who know, like, this is not just my sister because she's my sister and we dysregulate together. So it is choosing that intentional list of people that you know are supporting you through this process because we cannot do it alone.
right.
From there, I think it's a deep internal dive.
Hmm.
When I am angry, when I am sad, when I am frustrated, when I am aggravated, or when I'm happy, joyous, whatever, how can I first sit in that by myself? What can I discover by being in that by myself, by not being afraid? And I realized the other day there are very few things that cause fear within me anymore. How
Mm,
can I make love to my fear, make love to my grief, make love to my anger? That when these things come in, I can recognize them as the beauty that life is bringing to me.
hmm.
Have your list of people and go internal when you have these experiences. And then find your ways to express. Like I said, whether that's journaling, meditating, writing, contrast therapy, working out, lying still, taking a hot bath. There are so, and try different things. Because
Yes.
a hot bath might work for me today, but it might not work for me tomorrow.
Right. Yeah. Just because it doesn't
Understanding that
work for
the
you.
same as you have your list of people, you
Hmm.
have your list of go tos. When I'm angry, this helps me. When I'm sad, this helps me. When I'm aggravated, this helps me. And understanding that there's going to be rhythm and flow as you move through those practices as well.
Yeah. We end
And
up being the
never be
scientist.
afraid to lead with who you are. If I'm around my people and I say, you know what, I'm feeling some anger right now, I need to just remove myself from the situation. Or I'm feeling some anger right now. I'd love for you to help me express that.
Mm,
So
yeah.
much finish.
Yeah.
Be in it.
It's just the permission for yourself to express, the permission for other people to express, and then to not take it personally, not hold it, not, create an outcome with it, not judge it. Just
Not
let it
use it
go,
as a
right?
tool or a weapon.
Right. Right.
Yeah, because
Absolutely.
I totally have been guilty of using my own emotional state as a tool or as a weapon.
Yeah.
Quit taking that step back, saying, how does this serve me?
Hmm.
Is this
Yeah.
in my highest and greatest good right now?
And that goes back to everything's in my control. Everything is my choice. I'm choosing to sit with this. I'm choosing to feel this way. I'm doing it for my highest good, regardless of how much, it dysregulated somebody else, because that's not my job. That's not my option. And being able to, in our reciprocal relationships, respect each other while also being radically responsible for our own process. And that's, like you said, so important to choose the people that are around you that are on the same page, that can also do that, so that you have that capacity for each other and for yourself.
Me first, always
Yeah, first, always
throughout the
first
day.
and last.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's circling back to the last.
Yeah. I can be found on adriennejezick.com. You can Google me, Adrienne Jezick. I'm the only one in the world. You can keep an eye on my website for upcoming Morozko Method workshops, Akashic reading offerings, and just any other type of events that I'm currently practicing and participating in. You can also find me on Spotify at the Morozko Method podcast. You can find me on the Insight Timer if you're looking for a meditation to help you through your deliberate cold exposure practice. If you're interested in working with me one on one, head over to the website, drop a line.